The Forgotten Tower stood at the edge of the Imperial Palace, far from the grand halls where the Dragon Emperor held court. Nobody visited this place anymore. The servants whispered about it in dark corners, calling it the place where hope went to die. Inside the tower's highest room, Prince Emberfall stared out the window at the sky he could never touch. The Draconian Empire stretched across 47 star systems. Dragons ruled them all. They were proud beings who valued strength above everything else. They valued the power of flight and the glory of battle. A dragon who could not fly was not really a dragon at all. At least that was what everyone believed. Prince Emberfall was born 20 cycles ago. In human years, he would be about 30 years old. He came into this world with scales that shimmered like burning coals, with eyes that held the wisdom of his ancient bloodline. But something was wrong. His wings were too small, twisted at strange angles. His legs would not support his weight without terrible pain shooting through every muscle. The Emperor had called every healer in the Empire. They came from distant worlds with their medicines and their machines. They examined the young prince with their tools and their magic. They all left shaking their heads. The draconian medicine could not fix what nature had broken. Their science had no answers for this mystery. As the prince grew older, the palace grew more silent around him. His father, the great Emperor Volcanic Crest, stopped visiting. The courtiers whispered when they thought he could not hear. A prince who cannot fly cannot rule. A prince who cannot walk cannot lead armies. They moved him to the Forgotten Tower, away from the eyes of the Empire. The tower became his prison. Servants brought him food and left quickly. Doctors came and went, each one trying something new, each one failing. They built him floating platforms that hovered in the air, controlled by his thoughts. The platforms could carry him anywhere he wanted to go. But Emberfall refused to use them. He would rather crawl across the floor than admit he needed such things. His days were all the same. He woke in pain. He watched the sky through his window. He saw other dragons flying past, their wings catching the sunlight. They never looked toward his tower. By sunset, his heart felt as heavy as his useless legs. He went to sleep hoping he would not wake up. Then one morning everything changed. A new servant arrived at the tower. The prince heard footsteps on the stairs, lighter than the heavy tread of dragon claws. The door opened. A human woman walked in carrying a tray of food. She was small compared to his massive form. Her hair was dark and pulled back in a simple tie. She wore the plain gray uniform of the Imperial Service Corps. Humans were common in the Empire now. They did the work that dragons considered beneath them. They cleaned and cooked and fixed machines. They were seen as a lesser species, useful but not important. This human set down the tray and looked around the room with sharp eyes. The room was a mess. Empty plates were stacked in corners. Medical equipment lay scattered across the floor. The hovering platform sat unused against one wall, gathering dust. The human woman raised one eyebrow. Then she looked at the prince. He was lying on a massive cushion near the window, his wings folded awkwardly against his back. Sarah Chen had seen many things in her life. She had worked as a physical therapist on Earth for 10 years. She had helped people who were told they would never walk again. She had watched them take their first steps. She had celebrated their victories and cried at their defeats. Then her brother had died in an accident and she could not save him. The guilt drove her off-world looking for a fresh start. The Imperial Service Corps hired her without asking many questions. They needed workers and she needed to get away from Earth. They assigned her to the Forgotten Tower. The other servants told her it was the worst posting in the palace. The prince was angry and bitter. He went through servants like water. Nobody lasted more than a week. Sarah did not care. She had nothing left to lose. She looked at the prince and saw something the others had missed. His muscles had wasted away from lack of use. His wings hung limp, not just from birth defects, but from never being exercised. She had seen this before in human patients who stayed in bed too long. The prince glared at her with burning eyes. His voice came out as a low growl that shook the windows. "Why are you staring, human? Leave the food and go. I do not need another nursemaid." Sarah did not flinch. She crossed her arms and stared right back. "I am not a nursemaid. My name is Sarah Chen. I am a physical therapist, and I think you have been getting the wrong kind of help." The prince blinked in surprise. Nobody talked to him like that. "What do you mean, wrong kind of help? Every doctor in the Empire has seen me. There is nothing that can be done." "I was born broken." Sarah walked closer, studying his form with a professional eye. Maybe you were born with problems, but you have made them worse by doing nothing. Your muscles have forgotten how to work. Your body has given up. That can be fixed. The prince laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. You think you can fix what an empire of doctors could not? You are just a human. What do you know about dragon bodies? Sarah shrugged. I know about bodies that do not work right. I know about pain and weakness. I know about people who were told they would never walk and then they did. Bodies are bodies, whether they have wings or not. Muscles need to be used or they die. The prince was silent for a long moment. Then he turned away. Leave me alone. Take your hope somewhere else. I am tired of hope. Sarah picked up the tray and started toward the door. Then she stopped and looked back. I lost someone I loved because I could not help him. I have to live with that every day, but maybe I can help you. Maybe that will make the pain a little less. Think about it, Prince Emberfall. What do you have to lose? She left him alone with those words. The prince stared at the closed door for a long time. He thought about all the doctors who had poked and prodded him. He thought about all the medicines that had done nothing. He thought about the hovering platforms that sat unused in the corner. What did he have to lose? He had already lost everything. His future, his pride, his place in the empire. He was already broken. Maybe this strange human could make things worse. But they could not get much worse than they already were. When Sarah returned the next morning, the prince was waiting. His voice was quieter than before. What would you have me do, human? Sarah smiled for the first time since arriving at the tower. First, we clean this place up. Then we start with small steps, literally. We are going to teach your body how to work again. It will hurt. It will take time. But if you trust me, we can do this together. The prince looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well, Sarah Chen. Show me what humans know about the impossible. And so it began, in that dusty tower room with a broken prince and a human who refused to give up. The first week was harder than anything the prince had ever experienced. Sarah cleared the tower room of all the floating platforms. She pushed them into a storage closet and locked the door. The prince watched with growing horror. Those platforms were his only way to move around the room without crawling. Sarah saw his fear. She understood it. But she also knew that as long as those platforms were available, he would use them instead of his own body. We start today. No more machines, just you and your muscles. The prince wanted to argue. He wanted to order her to bring the platforms back. But something in her steady gaze stopped him. She believed she could help him. Maybe he could try to believe it too. Sarah built a frame from materials she found in the palace maintenance rooms. It was made of strong metal pipes that locked together. The frame had handles on the sides and support bars across the top. It looked like something from a hospital on Earth. When she brought it into the tower room, the prince stared at it with suspicion. What is that contraption? It is called a parallel bar frame. Humans use it when they are learning to walk again. You will hold the bars and use them to support your weight. Slowly, your legs will remember their strength. The prince looked at the simple metal frame. It seemed too small, too weak to hold his massive dragon body. Sarah read his doubt. Trust me, we will start small. Just try to stand. It took an hour to get the prince into position. His body did not want to cooperate. His legs shook with the effort of supporting even a fraction of his weight. Sarah guided him carefully, her small human hands surprisingly strong. She positioned his claws on the bars. She adjusted his weight distribution. She counted down. 3, 2, 1. Stand. The prince pushed up with all his strength. His legs straightened for the first time in years. Pain exploded through his body like fire. He roared loud enough to shake the tower walls. His legs gave out after just 30 seconds. He collapsed back onto his cushion, breathing hard. The prince was furious. He turned his burning gaze on Sarah. That was torture. You are trying to kill me. I will have you thrown out of the palace. Sarah did not back down. She crossed her arms and met his gaze calmly. That was progress. 30 seconds. Tomorrow we will do 40. The next day, 50. Your body needs to remember how to work. Pain means the muscles are waking up. The prince demanded that she be dismissed. He sent word to his father's advisors. Scaled Wisdom, an ancient dragon who managed the palace, came to the tower. He looked at the metal frame with disgust. This is beneath the dignity of royalty. The prince should not be made to struggle like a common beast. Bring back the floating platforms immediately. Sarah stepped forward. On Earth we have a saying, struggling makes us stronger. You have been making the prince weaker by doing everything for him. His body can heal, but only if he uses it. Scaled Wisdom hissed in anger. You dare lecture a dragon about our ways? You are just a human servant. Know your place. The argument reached the Emperor himself. Volcanic Crest listened to both sides with his ancient wise eyes. Finally, he spoke. The human will continue her work for 1 moon cycle. If there is no improvement, she will be removed. But I am curious about these human methods. Let us see what happens, so Sarah continued. Every day she pushed the prince a little harder. They started with standing exercises, then small steps while holding the frame, then balance work. She brought in weights made from scrap metal. She had him lift them with his legs to build muscle. She studied draconian anatomy books late into the night, learning everything she could about dragon bodies. The prince hated every minute. His whole body hurt all the time now. His muscles screamed in protest. But something strange was happening. After the first week, standing became a little easier. After 2 weeks, he could take 3 steps without collapsing. After 3 weeks, he could walk the length of the room if he held onto the frame. Sarah introduced him to stories from Earth. She told him about human athletes who had overcome terrible injuries. She told him about people who were paralyzed in accidents but learned to walk again through months of hard work. She told him about something called the Paralympics, where humans with disabilities competed in sports at the highest levels. The prince listened to these stories with growing wonder. On Earth, being different did not mean being worthless. Humans celebrated those who overcame challenges? Sarah nodded. We believe that the measure of a person is not what they are born with, but what they do with what they have. You are not broken, Prince. You are just facing a harder path than most. One night, the prince could not sleep. The pain in his legs was too much. He called for Sarah. She came quickly, still dressed in her day clothes. She had been studying in her small room below the tower. The prince looked at her with genuine curiosity for the first time. Why are you doing this? Why do you care whether I walk or not? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down on the floor near his cushion. Her voice was soft when she spoke. I had a brother. His name was James. He was in a vehicle accident 2 years ago. I was a therapist. I should have been able to help him, but I could not. He died before I could do anything. I left Earth because I could not face that failure every day. The prince saw tears in her eyes. She wiped them away quickly. I could not help him. But maybe I can help you. Maybe if I can make a difference here, the pain will be a little less. Maybe I can prove that I am not completely useless. The prince felt something shift in his chest. This human was carrying her own pain. She was broken too in her own way. He spoke gently, his voice losing its harsh edge. You are not useless, Sarah Chen. You have done more for me in 3 weeks than anyone has done in 20 cycles. I am sorry about your brother. Thank you for sharing that with me. Sarah looked up at him in surprise. It was the first kind thing he had said to her. The first time he had used her name without anger. From that night on, something changed between them. The prince stopped fighting against the exercises. He still complained about the pain, but he pushed through it. Sarah stopped seeing him as just a patient. She saw him as someone who was trying his best, just like her. They talked during the rest periods between exercises. She told him about Earth. He told her about the Empire and the burden of being royal. The moon cycle was almost over. Scaled Wisdom came to the tower to evaluate the progress. He expected to find the prince still lying on his cushion, defeated. Instead, he found Prince Emberfall standing at the parallel bars. The prince was not holding on. He was standing on his own legs, shaking with effort, but standing. Scaled Wisdom's eyes went wide. Impossible, this is impossible. The prince looked at the old advisor with fierce pride. Watch. He took 1 step forward, then another, then another. He walked 5 steps across the room without help. His legs trembled. Sweat poured down his scales. But he did it. He stopped and turned back to Scaled Wisdom. Does that look impossible to you? Scaled Wisdom left the tower in shocked silence. He went straight to the Emperor with his report. The Emperor came to the tower himself the next day. He had not visited his son in over a year. He stood in the doorway and watched as the prince demonstrated his progress. The Emperor said nothing for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. Continue the human's methods. Whatever she needs, she will have it. Sarah felt a wave of relief. They had bought more time, but she knew the real challenge was still ahead. Walking was one thing. Flying was something else entirely. The prince's wings had never been used. They hung from his back like dead weight. Could they be trained like his legs? She did not know, but she was determined to find out. That night, Sarah and the prince sat together on the tower balcony. The stars glittered above them. The prince looked up at the sky with longing. "Do you really think I could fly one day?" His voice was quiet, almost afraid to hope. Sarah followed his gaze to the stars. "I do not know, but I know we have to try. Your wings are muscles too. If your legs can be strengthened, maybe your wings can too." The prince was silent. Then he spoke, his voice filled with an emotion Sarah had never heard before. "Thank you, Sarah Chen, for believing in me when no one else did, for showing me that impossible just means nobody has tried the right way yet." Sarah smiled. "That is what humans do best. We are stubborn. We do not give up. And neither will you." They sat together in comfortable silence, looking at the stars. Sarah thought about her brother and the pain that had brought her here. Maybe his death had not been meaningless. Maybe it had led her to this place, to this broken prince who was learning to stand. Maybe that was enough. The prince thought about the future for the first time in his life. Maybe he could walk. Maybe he could fly. Maybe he could be more than the broken heir in the forgotten tower. Maybe he could be whole. Tomorrow they would start working on his wings. Tomorrow they would push the boundaries of what everyone said was possible. But tonight they had this moment of peace. A human and a dragon. Two broken souls finding strength in each other. The tower did not feel like a prison anymore. It felt like the beginning of something new. 3 months passed. The change in Prince Emberfall was remarkable. He could now walk without any support for short distances. His legs were still weak and he moved slowly, but he moved. The pain that once made him scream was now just a dull ache that he could manage. Every morning, Sarah put him through a strict routine. They started with stretches to keep his muscles flexible. Then came strength training. She had created weights from stones wrapped in cloth. The prince lifted them over and over, building his muscles. After that came walking practice. They walked circuits around the tower, going a little further each day. The pool sessions were the prince's favorite. In the water, his body felt light. He could move his wings more freely. Sarah studied draconian anatomy books late into the night. Learning everything about dragon physiology, she adapted exercises from Earth to fit his unique body. The servants who worked in the Forgotten Tower could not believe what they saw. The prince who once refused to leave his floating platform now walked through the halls. He was still not graceful, but he was moving on his own. Word spread through the palace. Some dragons came to watch from a distance. They were curious. Others were skeptical. They said it was a trick, that the human must be using some kind of technology to fool everyone. But those who watched carefully could see the truth. The prince's muscles were developing. His posture was improving. This was real, but there was still one problem. The prince could walk, but he could not fly. His wings had grown stronger from the exercises, but they were still too small and malformed to lift his body. Sarah knew this was the biggest challenge. She spent weeks researching flight. She watched birds on Earth in archived videos. She consulted with xenobiologists who studied different alien species. She talked to dragon pilots who flew spacecraft, asking them about aerodynamics. She was looking for any information that might help. One day, Sarah brought a new piece of equipment to the training chamber. It was a harness attached to strong cables. "The cables connected to the ceiling, what is that?" the prince asked. "A flight trainer," Sarah explained. "The cables will support most of your weight. It will let you practice using your wings without the risk of falling. On Earth, baby birds learn to fly by flapping their wings in the nest before they actually leave it. We are going to do the same thing." The prince looked doubtful, but he trusted Sarah. She had been right about everything else. He put on the harness. Sarah adjusted the cables until they held him at the right height. His feet could touch the ground if he wanted, but most of his weight was supported. "Now," Sarah said, "flap your wings. Start slow. Feel how the air moves." The prince spread his wings as much as he could. They were still twisted and small, but they were stronger than before. He began to flap them. Slowly at first, then faster. He felt the air pushing against them. He felt lift just a tiny bit. For a moment, just a split second, his feet left the ground completely. The cables kept him from falling, but he had lifted himself. His eyes went wide with shock and joy. "I felt it," he shouted. "I actually felt lift." Sarah was grinning. "Good, again. Keep practicing." They worked on flight training every day. The prince's wings grew stronger. He could lift himself a few inches off the ground for a few seconds. It was not true flight, not yet, but it was progress. It was hope. But not everyone was pleased with this progress. Duke Obsidian Fang watched from the shadows. His scales were black as night and his eyes were cold. He had waited years for his son to inherit the throne. He would not let a crippled prince and a human servant ruin his plans. The Duke began to spread rumors at court. He said the human was using forbidden technology to trick everyone. He said she was giving the prince drugs that temporarily made him stronger. He said it was all fake and would not last. Some dragons believed him. Others were not sure. One night the Duke did something terrible. He sent assassins to kill Sarah. They were not dragons, but hired criminals from a species called the Krellans. They were known for their stealth and cruelty. Sarah was walking back to her quarters late at night after a long training session. The hallways were empty and dark. She did not notice the shadows moving behind her. But the prince did. He had been unable to sleep and had come looking for her to ask a question about tomorrow's exercises. He was walking slowly through the hallway when he saw the Krellans following Sarah. He saw the knives in their hands. The prince did not think. He just acted. He threw himself forward, launching his body from his weak legs. He crashed into Sarah, knocking her out of the way, just as the first knife flew through the air. The blade meant for her back hit the stone wall instead. Sarah and the prince fell to the ground in a heap. The Krellans moved in for another attack, but palace guards heard the noise and came running. The assassins fled into the darkness. Sarah helped the prince sit up. They were both breathing hard. "You saved my life," she said, her voice shaking. "You have been saving mine every day for months," the prince replied. It was only fair, the guards investigated. They traced the Krellans back to a contact who worked for Duke Obsidian Fang. The emperor was furious when he learned what his brother had done. He arrested the duke and began questioning him. But the duke denied everything, saying the contact had acted on his own. The emperor could not prove the duke's guilt without more evidence. But he made it clear that if anything happened to Sarah or the prince, the duke would face justice. For now, the duke was released but watched carefully. After the attack, the emperor came to visit the Forgotten Tower. He wanted to see his son's progress for himself. The prince was nervous but ready. Sarah had prepared him for this moment. Emperor Volcanic Crest entered the training chamber. His massive form filled the doorway. The prince stood on his own without support. His father stared. "My son," the emperor said. "Stand before me." Prince Emberfall walked forward. His steps were slow and careful, but they were steady. He walked 20 paces and stopped in front of his father. Then, with great effort, he spread his wings and flapped them. He lifted himself 6 inches off the ground for 3 seconds before settling back down. It was not much. It was not real flight, but it was impossible, and the emperor saw it with his own eyes. The emperor turned to Sarah. "You have done what no one else could do." "How?" "I gave him something everyone else forgot to give him, Your Majesty," Sarah said. "I gave him a chance to try." The emperor nodded slowly. He looked at his son with new eyes. Pride and regret mixed in his expression. Pride at what his son had achieved. Regret that he had given up on him before. "Continue your work," the emperor said. "You have proven your methods work. But know this. My brother may try again to harm you. Be careful." After the emperor left, the prince and Sarah stood together in the quiet chamber. They both knew the real test was still ahead. Walking was good. Lifting off the ground for a few seconds was amazing. But true flight? That seemed impossible. Yet they had already done so many impossible things. Maybe they could do one more. 6 months after Sarah arrived at the Forgotten Tower, the emperor made an announcement that shocked the entire empire. He declared there would be an ascension ceremony in 30 days. It was an ancient tradition used when there were multiple heirs to the throne. Each heir had to fly to the top of the Spire of Judgment and retrieve the dynasty crystal. Whoever succeeded would be named Crown Prince. The spire was a natural rock formation that rose high above the palace. It was a test of strength, flying skill, and courage. The ceremony had not been held in 300 years because there had always been a clear heir. But now the emperor was giving his son a chance to prove himself. The only other potential heir was Duke Obsidian Fang's son, Prince Crimson Talon. He was strong, fierce, and an excellent flyer. Everyone expected him to win easily. Prince Emberfall attempting the ceremony was seen as foolish by many. When Sarah heard the news, she felt fear grip her heart. 30 days was not enough time. The prince could walk well now. He could lift himself off the ground for short periods. But sustained flight to the top of the spire? That seemed impossible. She went to the prince. "You do not have to do this," she said. "It is too soon. We need more time." The prince looked out the window at the spire in the distance. "This is my only chance," he said. "If I do not try, my uncle's son will become crown prince, and my uncle will eventually become emperor. He has already tried to kill you once. What do you think he will do if he gains more power? I must try, even if I fail. At least I will fail trying." Sarah knew he was right. She nodded. "Then we train harder than ever before. Every hour of every day. We will make you ready." The next 30 days were the hardest of their lives. They trained 16 hours each day. The prince pushed his body to its absolute limits. Sarah designed new exercises, new techniques, new ways to build strength. They worked on endurance, making the prince fly in the harness for longer and longer periods. But no matter how hard they tried, the prince could not achieve true sustained flight. His wings were simply too small and malformed. He could glide short distances. He could hop and use his wings to extend the jumps. But he could not fly the way other dragons did. Sarah refused to give up. She studied engineering and biomechanics. She looked at the exoskeleton technology that helped the prince's legs. Maybe there was a way to apply the same idea to flight. She worked through the night, designing and building. 3 days before the ceremony, Sarah showed the prince her creation. It was a lightweight exoskeleton that attached to his legs and spine. It used hydraulic assistance to make his jumps more powerful. It did not make him fly, but it gave him more options. "Try it," she said. The prince put on the exoskeleton. It felt strange at first. Then he jumped. The exoskeleton amplified the power of his legs. He launched into the air 3 times higher than normal. His wings caught the air and he glided forward in a smooth arc before landing. It was not traditional dragon flight. It was a hybrid style combining powerful jumps with gliding, but it worked. The prince could cover distance. He could gain altitude. Maybe, just maybe, he could reach the spire. They practiced the new technique constantly. Jump, glide, land, jump again. The prince learned to judge distances and plan his route. He learned to use air currents to extend his glides. His body adapted to this strange new way of moving. The night before the ceremony, Sarah and the prince stood on the balcony of the Forgotten Tower. They looked at the stars in silence for a while. "I am afraid," the prince admitted. "Not of failing, not of the pain. I am afraid of letting you down. You have given me everything. You believed in me when no one else did." Sarah turned to face him. "You could never let me down, whether you reach the top of that spire or not. You have already achieved something amazing. 6 months ago you could not stand. Now you walk. You jump, you glide. You have proven that nothing is truly impossible if you are willing to work for it. That is victory enough." The prince looked at her for a long moment. He realized something in that moment. Somewhere along this journey, he had fallen in love with this small, determined human. She had given him so much more than the ability to move. She had given him hope, purpose, and someone who truly saw him for who he was. "Sarah," he said softly, "no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you have changed my life. You saved me," she smiled, "and you saved mine. We saved each other." The morning of the ceremony arrived. Thousands of dragons gathered at the palace grounds. The entire empire watched through holographic broadcasts. This was a historic moment. Prince Crimson Talon went first. He was magnificent. His red scales gleamed in the sunlight. His wings were powerful and perfect. He took off from the ground and soared upward in a smooth, graceful flight. He reached the top of the spire in less than 3 minutes. The crowd roared their approval as he retrieved the dynasty crystal and descended. Then it was Prince Emberfall's turn. The crowd fell silent as he stepped forward. Many had never seen him before. They whispered when they saw his twisted wings and the strange exoskeleton on his legs. "He is using human technology," someone shouted. "This is against our ways." The emperor raised his hand for silence. "The rules state that the heir must reach the top and retrieve the crystal. They do not state how. Let him try." The prince looked into the crowd and found Sarah's face. She nodded at him. He took a deep breath. Then he began. He crouched low. The exoskeleton charged. Then he launched himself into the air. His jump was massive, propelling him dozens of feet upward. His wings spread and caught the air. He glided forward and up, using the momentum from his jump. The crowd gasped. This was not how dragons flew. It was strange and different, but it was working. The prince landed on a ledge halfway up the spire. He jumped again, gliding to another platform. He moved in a pattern of powerful leaps and controlled glides. It was not graceful like Crimson Talon's flight, but it was effective. He was climbing higher and higher. Then halfway to the top, disaster struck. The exoskeleton made a terrible grinding sound. One of the hydraulic joints had failed. It had been sabotaged. Duke Obsidian Fang had bribed a maintenance worker to weaken it. The prince stumbled as the support on his left leg failed. The crowd gasped, thinking he would fall. Even Crimson Talon looked concerned. Sarah's heart stopped, but the prince did not fall. He quickly removed the broken exoskeleton, letting it drop away. Now he had nothing but his own strength. His legs, strengthened by 6 months of Sarah's training. His wings, small but powerful from endless exercises. He looked up at the top of the spire. It was still so far away. His body was already tired. The pain in his legs was intense, but he thought of Sarah's words. Impossible just means no one has tried the right way yet. The prince crouched and jumped with all his strength. It was not as high as before, but his legs were stronger now than when he started. He flapped his wings with everything he had. The glide was rougher, more desperate, but he climbed higher. Jump, glide, land, jump, glide, land. He fell into a rhythm. His muscles screamed in protest. His wings felt like they would tear, but he did not stop. He refused to stop. The crowd watched in complete silence now. No one had ever seen anything like this. A dragon forcing himself to fly through pure determination and an unconventional technique. One more jump. One more glide. The prince's claws reached out and caught the edge of the spire's summit. He pulled himself up with his arms, his wings giving one final push. He collapsed on top, his whole body shaking with exhaustion. But he was there. He had made it. With trembling hands, he picked up the Dynasty Crystal. Then he stood, holding it high so everyone could see. The crowd erupted. The roar was deafening. They had witnessed the impossible. The broken prince had flown. The descent from the spire was easier. The prince half glided, half fell in a controlled manner. When his feet touched the ground, his legs gave out and he collapsed. But he was still holding the Dynasty Crystal. Sarah ran to him, pushing through the crowd. She knelt beside him, checking him for injuries. The prince was bruised and exhausted, but he was smiling. It was the first genuine smile she had ever seen on his face. "I did it," he whispered. "We did it, you did it," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "You were amazing." Emperor Volcanic Crest approached. The crowd parted before him. He looked down at his son, and for the first time in 20 years, he knelt beside him. The crowd gasped. The emperor never knelt for anyone. "My son," the emperor said, his voice thick with emotion, "I have wronged you. I gave up on you when I should have believed in you. You have shown strength greater than any I have ever seen. Not the strength of wings or scales, but the strength of will." The emperor stood and addressed the crowd. His voice echoed across the palace grounds. "Today you have all witnessed something extraordinary. My son has proven that determination can overcome any obstacle. He has shown us a new definition of strength. Prince Emberfall, I name you Crown Prince of the Draconian Empire. You have earned it." The crowd roared their approval. Even those who had doubted the prince could not deny what they had seen. He had done the impossible, but the emperor was not finished. He turned to face Duke Obsidian Fang, who stood in the crowd looking pale. "Guards," the emperor said. "Arrest my brother. Evidence has been found that he sabotaged my son's equipment. He also ordered the assassination attempt on Sarah Chen. He will be tried for treason." The guards seized the duke. His son, Crimson Talon, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I knew nothing of my father's crimes. I competed fairly today. I accept Prince Emberfall as the rightful crown prince." The emperor nodded. "I believe you. You have honor. Your father did not." The duke was led away. He would be exiled to a distant prison world, where he could never threaten anyone again. The emperor then turned to Sarah. "Sarah Chen of Earth," he said, "you have done what the greatest doctors and healers in the empire could not do. You believed in my son when everyone else saw only a broken prince. You gave him back his life. For this service, I grant you noble status. You are now Lady Sarah Chen, chief advisor to the crown prince." Sarah bowed her head. "Thank you, Your Majesty, but I need no title. Helping the prince was reward enough." "Nevertheless, you have it," the emperor said. You have also earned the gratitude of the entire empire. I am issuing a decree today. Physical disability will no longer be treated as a source of shame in our society. We will establish rehabilitation centers across all our worlds, using the methods you developed. We will help all those who need it. This announcement caused another wave of noise through the crowd. It was a fundamental change to draconian culture. But after what they had witnessed, no one could argue against it. Over the following weeks, the prince recovered from his ordeal. His unique flying style became famous across the galaxy. Other dragons with disabilities began seeking help. Sarah trained other physical therapists in her methods. The Forgotten Tower was renamed the House of Second Chances and became the first rehabilitation center. The prince threw himself into learning how to rule. He studied law, economics, and diplomacy. He proved to be a wise and compassionate leader. When problems arose, he always looked for creative solutions, just as Sarah had taught him. He also continued to practice his flying every day. He never became as graceful as other dragons, but his skill improved. He could now fly for extended periods, covering great distances with his unique combination of powerful jumps and gliding. Young dragons began copying his style, seeing it as innovative rather than inferior. 6 months after the ascension ceremony, the prince invited Sarah to the tower that had once been his prison, but was now a place of hope for many. They stood on the balcony where they had spent so many evenings talking. "Sarah," he said, "we have been through an incredible journey together. You have given me everything. My mobility, my purpose, my confidence. But there is one more thing I want to ask of you." Sarah looked at him curiously. "What is it?" The prince reached into a pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a ring, crafted from crystal and precious metals. It was designed to fit a human hand. "On Earth, I understand there is a tradition," the prince said. "When someone loves another person deeply, they ask them to be their partner for life. They get married. I know I am not human. I know our species are very different. But I love you, Sarah. You saw me when I was broken and you helped me become whole. Will you marry me?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She had not expected this. But as she looked at the prince, she realized that somewhere along this journey, she had fallen in love with him too. Not with a prince or a dragon, but with the person he was. His courage, his determination, his kindness. "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I will marry you." The prince placed the ring on her finger. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He wrapped his wings around her in a gentle embrace. It was the dragon equivalent of a hug. Sarah laughed and hugged him back. "We will face challenges," the prince said. "Not everyone will accept this union. But we have already done so many impossible things together. What is one more?" "One more impossible thing," Sarah agreed with a smile. The prince stepped to the edge of the balcony. "Come with me. Let me show you something." He picked her up carefully in his arms. Then he jumped from the balcony, his wings spreading wide. They glided through the air together, flying over the palace grounds. Sarah laughed with pure joy as the wind rushed past them. Below them, dragons and other species looked up and watched. They saw their future crown prince flying with his human partner, moving through the sky in a way that was uniquely his own. It was not traditional dragon flight. It was something new, something beautiful. The wedding took place 3 months later. It was a spectacular event that brought together dragons, humans, and many other species from across the empire. The ceremony combined traditions from both cultures. The emperor himself presided over it, giving his blessing to this unusual union. Sarah wore a beautiful dress made from fabrics of both earth and dracon, prime. The prince wore ceremonial robes that had been modified to accommodate his wings and his unique physique. When they exchanged vows, there was not a dry eye in the audience. Years passed. The prince continued to rule wisely as crown prince. The rehabilitation centers he established helped thousands of disabled dragons and other species. The methods Sarah developed became standard practice across the empire. Slowly, draconian society began to change, becoming more inclusive and accepting of those who were different. Sarah and the prince became symbols of hope. They proved that love could bridge any gap, that determination could overcome any obstacle, and that working together could achieve the impossible. One evening, many years later, they stood together on their favorite balcony. The prince's flying had continued to improve. He was now one of the most respected flyers in the empire, not despite his unique style but because of it. He had shown that there were many ways to soar. Do you ever regret it? the prince asked. Leaving Earth? Coming to this strange empire? Taking on an impossible task? Sarah looked at him and smiled. Never, not even for a moment. I came here broken, running from my past. But you helped me heal just as much as I helped you. We saved each other. What do you think people will remember about our story? The prince asked. Sarah thought for a moment. I think they will remember that impossible is just a word. It is not a limit. It is not a destination. It just means no one has found the right way yet. And when you find that right way, when you refuse to give up, anything becomes possible. The prince nodded. The Dragon Emperor's heir who never walked or flew until a human maid did the impossible. We did it together, Sarah said. The prince smiled. Then he spread his wings and took Sarah in his arms. Together they launched into the evening sky, flying in their own unique way. Below them, the lights of the palace glowed warmly. Above them, the stars shone bright with infinite possibilities. And somewhere, watching from wherever souls go after they leave their bodies, a young man named David smiled. His sister had found her purpose. She had found her happiness. She had found her way to fly. The impossible had become possible, and it all started with one human who refused to give up on a broken prince, and one prince who learned that being different was not the same as being broken. Together they had changed not just themselves, but an entire empire. Their story became legend, told across countless worlds. It inspired others to never give up, to always look for new solutions, and to believe that with determination, creativity, and love, anything was possible. The end of their story was really just the beginning, because the greatest lesson they learned and taught was simple. Impossible just means no one has tried the right way yet.